Okay, so welcome back to the. I totally need to start that again. Okay, we'll cut that part out. We'll cut
No,
out
maybe we'll keep it.
maybe the blooper reel where Matt forgets the name of his own podcast.
Rabbit.
Okay, okay,
White
so
rabbit.
yeah, the White Rabbit. Welcome to this episode of the White Rabbit Podcast. And so today, in today's episode, we're going to dive into the topic that Alper has on his mind. And the thing that got this started was that over the past couple months, we've had a handful of guests. And so Alper and I have had some time to digest the subjects that we talked about. And so Alper has something on his mind. So what's on your mind today, Alper? What do you want to talk about?
Well, what's on my mind is coming directly from the episode we did with Alex.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, when reading his book, I realized there was some content which was completely applicable to the presentations and to the communication that we do.
Okay.
And it's a great book, by the way. If anyone,
Yeah.
if there is anyone who hasn't read it yet, I will strongly recommend it.
I recommend it too. It's a good book.
One of the major key takeaways I took from that book, well, actually, I think it's explicitly stated in the book, but which is applicable to the presentations, is that the strategy is not a goal. And what I loved most, I'm going to refer to my notes here. What I loved most about that idea was that he was talking about the unique value of a business, for example, the unique value that a business provides to the market. And I'm not going to dig into his narrative, but I'm going to talk about what I took from that and how I think it applies to the presentations that we make.
Back up a second and let me
Sure.
make sure that I'm following you correctly. So when you said that Alex said strategy is not a goal. So like an example of a goal would be I want to make $10 million next year. Is that what you mean by a goal? Okay.
That's how I understand it. Yeah.
So
yeah.
So
that's
Alex,
a goal and it's not a strategy.
Alex was saying that's not a strategy. That's a goal,
Yeah.
but it's not a strategy. Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
And then this concept of unique value that he was talking about got me thinking in terms of the presentations. Because, of course, the presentations have strategies, the presentations have goals, but I think a key missing element of, I don't know, gazillion number of presentations that I have seen up to this date is that they were actually missing this unique value. And it got me to thinking, what could be the unique value of a presentation? Let's say you are standing in front of a group of prospective buyers and your idea is to make them the sale and have them sign the deal. But in that regard, I don't think that is the unique value. And it got me to thinking, is definitely, and in these presentations, what happens is we are usually comparting with a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of things, especially about us. But I don't think any of them would constitute the real value in a presentation.
Okay.
And like I said, it got me to thinking. I did some reflections and I realized these are just tools. I mean, the data that I share, the slides that I use, maybe even the things that we talk about all the time, like the vocal variety, the body language, eye contact, etc., etc. I think these are just tools and means.
Okay.
And then I dug deeper. Hold that thought for a second. I dug deeper. So, okay, what is the value then of a presentation? And I'm going to paraphrase him, quote him, but changing some of the words. And I wrote, the unique value of the presentation is actually the benefit that your audience will get from the presentation itself. These are not my words. Well, actually, some of them are my words, but I have to give Alex full credit because he's the one who came up with this idea in the book. And then I realized the unique value of the presentation is the thing that the audience gets, not as in understanding, but actually getting, which they value enough to pay attention to. So for me, this was a complete game changer in the way I prepare my presentations now, in the way I start working on my speeches.
So wait, I'm confused here. So give me an example. We're talking about there's the goal, there's the value,
Mm-hmm.
and was there anything else?
Well, strategy not so much into the presentation because I think the goal and the value are more
Mm,
connected to the idea of presentation.
okay.
Uh,
Let's do an example of goal versus value. Can you give me, because I'm not sure I understand the distinction there.
okay, from the top of my head, I'm thinking maybe the goal of the presentation is to get the sale closed.
Okay.
There are prospective buyers in front of me. I'm presenting to them. Let's say this is a company presentation. I'm talking to them, and my goal is to actually close the sale.
Okay.
But that would not be the value of the presentation.
Okay.
I think,
Tell me more.
like I said, I'm thinking off the top of my head. I think at that point, the value of the presentation would be something that those prospective buyers would pay attention to. And closing the sale, I don't think I don't think it would be on the top of their list of things that they value in that presentation. So
Okay.
what could they value? They might value things like hearing how this solution that I'm offering is going to change their lives or make their lives easier or make them lose less money or actually have bigger margins on some other things that they are working on. So the value is this thing that they would be paying attention to even before making the decision to close a sale and buy my services.
Okay.
But there is one crucial point which I'm also taking from his book, and is the core job and the core job of the presentation. And the idea of core job is something that I'm bringing from his book, not the core job of the presentation. Is something that I am combining in my world of presenting. And
Okay.
I would say the core job of any presentation then would be to determine actions. So the presentation would tell the audience what to do. So let's get back to that example for this. Let's come back to that example. In the presentation towards prospective buyers, what is the core job of the presentation?
The core
What do you
job,
think it would be?
it seems to me that so the goal is to close the sale.
Mm-hmm.
The core job, it sounds like the core job is going to be different for each. The core job is going to be different for the person giving the presentation, the person selling,
Mm-hmm.
versus the audience members. So the core job for the person selling would be to make the sale. Did I get that? Is that pretty close?
In my opinion, yes and no. Yes, it's about closing the sale, but no, because in my opinion, or at least in my understanding, the core job of the presentation is actually determine the actions. Closing the sale is going to be part of that action.
Okay.
Signing the deal is going to be part of that. But if you're the prospective buyer, and if I'm making you the presentation, at the end of the presentation, I would want you to see that there's a set of actions to be determined, and we're going to decide on them now. And hardly ever they are actually signing the deal itself. Maybe the deal will be signed in several days or in a couple of days or something.
Okay.
But I think the core job of any presentation or at least that presentation at that moment would be determining the actions to tell the audience what to do. Of course, there are no guarantees that they are going to move in that direction, but it's about whether I have been convincing enough, if I have been open or clear enough, not open but clear enough for them to see the benefit and want to move in that direction. This for me is a paradigm change because most of the time, like I said, I witness presentations being one-way communication in which I tell you something and then hopefully I expect you to get it. I
Yeah.
expect you to understand it. And
Mm-hmm.
more hopefully, I expect you to act on it.
Okay.
But if I'm not making it clear in the presentation what the value is and what
Mm-hmm.
the actions are, I
Mm-hmm.
think it would be very difficult. I think it would be like shooting in the dark. And that's why I think most of the time these conversations end up with the other side saying, okay, we'll get back to you. And I think most of the time they never do.
Okay.
So yeah, that episode that we had with Alex and reading his book further actually put me literally down this rabbit hole of identifying the strategy, the goal, and the value of, and of course the core job of a presentation.
Okay. So there's something here that I'm not quite sure I understand. You mentioned that this was a paradigm shift for you,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of missed how this would be a paradigm shift. So can you go into that a little bit more? How it was a paradigm shift for you?
It was a paradigm shift in the sense that the job of the presentation becomes about it becomes about determining the actions. It's not informing anymore. Maybe it's not even inspiring anymore. But I mean, we're talking about business presentations, by the way. We're not talking about motivational TED speeches or things where you want to get masses into action. I'm talking about
Sure.
smaller scale business presentations.
Uh-huh.
And the paradigm shift for me was determining the core job of the presentation makes everything else easier because now you have a specific target that you want to reach, which is determining the actions.
Uh-huh.
And it gives you the possibility, the opportunity, let's say, to think of it from both sides. Like, okay, what are the action, what is the desired outcome, and what are the actions from your side as a presenter, and what are
Okay.
they from the side of the audience as the listeners. And I
Sure.
think this would help you get much more aligned in your messaging between their world and your world. And I think it will be one of the fundamental changes to most of the presentations as I see out there, which is usually only narratives from the world of the presenter himself.
Okay, so let me see if I am following you correctly. So it sounds here like the understanding the core job makes it much more likely that there would be a two-way conversation between you and the audience members. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And you would be having that conversation because the core job is much bigger than your goal for the presentation. The goal might be, to close the deal or to
Mm-hmm.
get them to say yes or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
But the core job of the presentation, so the core job is bigger than that. The core job is bigger picture than that. It's like
Yes.
understanding if I can reach my goal of getting the contract signed or whatever, if I can reach that goal, there are going to be some steps that are going to need to follow after that, and I want to start understanding what those are. So is that kind of what you're saying, that the
Or
core
maybe
goal?
before that, maybe the core job which determines the actions, maybe those actions are going to come before signing the deal.
Okay.
So in this regard, you would be guiding, let's say, the audience into what those actions are. And once you have them determined, once you have the actions determined, then you can look at your presentation and with a careful eye, you can say, okay, the things that I'm sharing, the things that I'm conveying in this presentation are in line with taking those actions. And if you see that they're not, you can just get rid of them. So you can make the presentation much, much shorter, much simpler, and not cause any audience members lose you during the conversation.
And it's interesting that you found this amount of inspiration out of the interview with Alex, which, I mean, Alex is not a presentation guy directly. He's he's a strategy guy directly.
Yeah.
And yet it was kind of interviewing somebody in a tangential field, which gave you this inspiring idea. Huh.
And I think part of what contributed to that was the way that he described the business, and I'm reading from my notes again here, as a system designed to deliver value.
Okay.
So in that regard, I would also treat any presentation from now on as a system to deliver value, not to just part information to the other side about my world. I think we should really focus on what is the value that I will be providing to the other side. And after after creating that idea on their minds, okay, so what are the next steps? And that would be, again, coming back to the core job, which is to determine the actions to take.
And this would be, it strikes me that if you are a salesperson, let's say, for example, you're a salesperson and you're going up against, a short list of three or four candidates who are also giving a similar presentation. You being able to give a bigger picture presentation like this would help you a lot, because it would force an expansion of your audience members' brains. Whereas, with your competitors, your audience members are basically walking into the presentation thinking, the only thing that's required here is that we decide yes or no on this person, thumbs up or thumbs down on this company.
Yeah.
Here in what you're talking about, the presentation would be bigger picture. So me as an audience member, not only is Alper asking for an, thumbs up or a thumbs down, Alper is helping me expand the way that I see the world.
Exactly. And that's the value I will be providing.
Yeah. So, and I would like to see Alper back in the office if he's the guy who can expand my brain and help me see the world in a bigger way.
And if I start that presentation not with our company, our milestones, our organizational chart or whatever, I think we will be knocking out the competition out of the park.
Yeah. Because most of your competitors' presentations are going to start with those immensely boring subjects. I don't know why people do that. I've been in this business
Thank
for a
God
long
they do
time.
that, by the way. Thank God.
Thank God they do that, but man, I've
otherwise
never
we'll
figured
have
out
to
why
come
they
up with
do.
new extreme ways.
True. Okay, so before we wrap up for the day, is there anything else that you wanted to cover about this?
No, for the moment that'll be all.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.
See you in the next episode.
Okay. See you in the next episode.
Bye-bye.